everyone, and welcome to the Rockish George podcast, episode 13. I'm your host, George Dion. You can check out my other work at metalexpressradio.com. For episode 13, I have another great interview for you with the English melodic rock band Blood Red Saints. They released an album on August 6, 2021 called Undisputed. It's their fourth album as a band. The band originally started with their debut album in 2014 called Speedway. As the band's press release says, when they searched for their name, they got their name from a chance discovery of a semi-legendary speedway team, the Blood Red Saints, who were formed in the late 1920s in Brooklyn, New York. Their leader, Freddie Rendetti, became synonymous with the team and was a fiery, colorful character who ultimately lived the fast life a little too fast. Well, I'll tell you right now, there's a twist to that story, and you're going to get it here when I speak to the Blood Red Saints. I got to talk with three members of the band: Pete Godfrey on vocals, Lee Revell, the guitar player, and Rob Naylor on bass. So here's the Blood Red Saints. If I knew absolutely nothing about Blood Red Saints, how would you describe the band's music to me?
AOR, hard rock, melodic rock, bit of everything really. Well, we've tried everything in the past, haven't we really? But mainly AOR, I would suppose. Although I don't class us really as AOR. I think AOR was always like the Eagles to me. I thought we were a little bit harder than that. I describe us as melodic rock.
So, George, that just proves that we haven't got a clue what we are.
So you're probably better at answering it.
I don't think any of us would even know what AOR meant when we were growing up and listening to music.
No, you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't even think that was a term, was it?
No,
I don't think it was. No.
So how young are you, George?
I'm 45.
45 young.
You're way younger than us.
Yeah, you're a lot younger than us, but at least someone else didn't know what AOR was actually supposed to be.
But you're right. I mean, it was just rock. It was the current rock at the time. Now we're 35 years too late, so yeah, now we have to put another title on it, don't we? Melodic rock.
I think it was once Europe discovered 80s music, they had to give it their own thing, AOR.
Yeah.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys have a new album out. It's called Undisputed. It came out on August 6th on Frontiers. Let's talk a little bit about the singles that have come out so far. Let's talk about kind of the meaning behind Heaven in the Headlights.
Well, basically, that's the first track we ever did. We sort of sat there going, this is going to set... Yeah, for this album. So we sat there, we're thinking, right, we need it to be melodic rock then. Conscious decision, melodic rock. But we didn't really know until we got this track back. So we sort of I wrote the music. I literally got it from start to finish, sent it over to Pete, and using the modern era of Dropbox, we kind of sort of like, let's see how we go. I sent it to him. 3 or 4 hours later, I've not heard a thing. I'm going, oh, maybe he's not into it. Maybe he's not liking this. Okay. Next user gets a message, check Dropbox. And the rough mix of Heaven in the Headlights appeared, and we just went, yeah, okay, I think this is what we're going to be doing. And it just turned out really well. So that was basically how it sort of set in motion.
And it's weird because Rob was saying earlier, we sort of, quite often we come up with a title and you write a song around the title. You know, it'll be like Love Like War was a title, wasn't it? Mm. And then you sort of build your lyrics around that or whatever loosely. Heaven in the Headlights was never a title. It just happened. I mean, the obvious thing is, you know, your headlights hit a girl and she's devastatingly good looking and, oh, wow, I found her. But there was never any intention to write it and call it Heaven in the Headlights. It just happened. It was weird. So there's no theory or meaning behind the song, you know what I mean?
It's not an in-depth song, that one.
Those are some of the best songs.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Another one that you released is Breathe Again.
When we did the first album, we just sent it off for mastering and we wrote that song or a version of that song. So it was too late for the Speedway, which was our first one. And then it sort of just sat on the back burner. We knew we had a good song, but we never could nail it. And we tried to change a little bit musically on the second two. We started trying to be. I started trying to be Shinedown. Didn't work out very well, right? So on this one, we went back to where we started, and that was one of the songs that was there, sort of like in the catalogue. But it's a true story. It's about a friend of mine that his wife died in her mid-30s and left him with 3 kids, like 1-year-old, 3-year-old, and 7 or something. And it sort of wrote itself. It was just a real song, which we've very rarely, if ever, done. So it's a bit of a change for us to have a real theme. But yeah, it's all pretty much true.
That was the way that we did. That was another interesting thing. It was an old song.
Yeah.
But I didn't say anything. I literally finished it. I finished all the music, reinvented it, redid it on. I thought, this is going to, hopefully, if he's going to love this. And that was another one I sent on Dropbox and just went, check Dropbox. And then I didn't hear anything for about 3 or 4 hours again. I'm going, I'm taking that this is a good sign here. And the next news, he sent back the version. I was blown away when it came back. I was going, I think we've nailed it this time. So even though it's an old song, it just sounds so fresh, which was really good, really good. Because I loved the song.
We all loved the song.
We finally got it in.
Yeah.
Good. The third single you have out is called Come Alive, if you want to talk about that one.
That's harking back to the 80s completely. It's about us living our lives in the 80s. We're all very much into the American style. We all love the American bands, don't we? We were saying it the other day.
Yeah.
Van Halen, Winger, Rat, Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Apart from, I think there's only Def Leppard that you'd put in there, English-wise, who are our influences. And that's Pete again, just harking back to the 80s and saying maybe we could have fitted quite well into the American style of it on the Sunset Strip.
We honestly wanted to be American in the 80s.
That's what it was.
We really did. Everything that you loved about sort of like the scene at the time for us was American. I wasn't into Saxon and Iron Maiden and Thin Lizzy, you were a little, but I was always into those American bands. And it was just like, when we came to do this, it had that good time feel, the tune that Lee had come up with. And it was like, we just got to do one, a little bit like Summertime Girls was for Y&T, sort of an happy-go-lucky sort of song. But the problem is we can't drive around, I've said this before, in a soft top because we just get soaked with the rain. It's a bit different for us to you lot.
And 25 years ago, we could have had our hair blowing in the wind, but not now.
Yeah, now you just get chapped for heads.
Well, I think that in America, I guess the powers that be in the music industry kind of ruined that music by kind of focusing on the image. And those guys' music kind of gets lost here in America 30 years later. And I think it's a little more predominant in the European countries now. But I mean, they still sold millions of records. They still made hit songs, but the industry completely ignores them now.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're completely right. It's similar over here, isn't it? You can't get radio play, mainstream radio play.
No chance.
They don't want to know. As soon as we understand because we're old. We're not going to be in demand from the chart sort of radio stations now. But it's really sort of like it's almost been wiped out. I mean, people, you'll still get 20-odd-year-olds dancing to Bon Jovi to Living on a Prayer, but it's just not. It's like the scene never happened over here now. It's really underground. And when we were growing up, it was chart stuff.
Yeah, everywhere. Everywhere. There were 6 or 7 rock bands in the charts with singles out.
Yeah, but it's sort of frowned upon. Melodic rock, that whatever you want to call it, is really sort of like, that was the 80s, wasn't it? But so was Iron Maiden, and they're selling out arenas. Weird.
There's nowhere explaining how some are, having a resurgence and some aren't. I mean, you talk to some 20-year-olds today, they like Toto. And I think back in the day, we would look at a band like Toto and be like, oh, those are a bunch of lamos. But when you listen to them 30 years later, you're like, hey, this isn't bad.
Yeah, you're right. You are right. God, yeah, it's true, that, isn't it?
So that's where that is, harking back.
Absolutely. And you know what? You mentioned it, saying there's not a lot of places for your music now and stuff like that. And that kind of ties into the title of your album, Undisputed, and having to fight for your music and stuff like that. The major avenues for you guys are probably just streaming at this point or live shows when they come back.
Yeah.
Live shows, yeah. We
don't know, do we?
It's similar to America, innit? I mean, we've seen a lot of bands are cancelling and postponing to next year. And we normally do a launch show. That's our baby. This time we couldn't plan anything because literally until probably 3 weeks ago, everywhere was closed. But then the knock-on, which Lee said quite a few times now, is everything that's been booked for the last 18 months, 20 months is being knocked over to next year, which means everything's booked up for 2022. So you're looking at 2023. As far as going out supporting this album, pretty much forget it, really.
So it's going to have to be, we've got to hope for getting into festivals, and which is the only thing really left to go to festivals, or getting on the old support of a bigger band, which then you can try and expose yourself.
If it happens, yeah.
You guys have played live before at festivals and stuff like that. What was kind of one of your favorite festivals that you played?
Go on.
Well, for me, it was we got signed to Frontiers for the first album, and we got asked to play the Frontiers Festival in Milan. And so going over to Italy as a band within 12 months of forming, and the production of the show and the way that they treated us was amazing. So for me, definitely a high point. That was the first time I played abroad as well, by the way. So that was just a fantastic experience.
Yeah, it's the same thing. We were all the same on the flight over. We were like, we're getting paid to do this. It never happened before. It was like, we're getting paid to do this.
Tell about the minibus.
Yeah, and then we get to the airport, and it was like, we were like, did you ever watch Spinal Tap?
Yeah.
Well, it was like we were like the characters in Spinal Tap because everything was amazing to us because it had never happened. We got to the airport and there was a guy there with the card with the Blood Red Saints on, and we were all like, "Oh my God, look, it's us pointing at the guy." And he's like, "Well, okay, lad, get on the bus." So we get on a bus, fully expecting another 45 people to get on this coach, right? Nobody gets on. There's 5 of us. We've all bags in the back seat. We're all sat on the back seat. Nobody else gets on the coach because it's our coach.
It's our coach.
Yeah. And then we're like, "Whoa, we've made it. We've made it. We're on the coach. It's our coach."
It's ours.
And the icing on the cake was the windows were blacked out. Have that.
Yeah. So that pretty was. Have you got a better one?
I'm lucky. I was lucky to. I've played guitar for Stan Bush. And also I play guitar for Kevin Chalfont. So on the same festival, I got to do Blood Red Saints during the day, which was brilliant. It actually was a really good gig, that. And then when we finished that, I actually headlined a festival for Kevin Chalfont.
That's true, isn't it?
That was quite a good show. So that was a bucket list thing.
Germany?
No, Rockingham.
Well, where did you play for in Germany?
Stan Bush. Yeah, Stan Bush still played for.
It doesn't get any more 80s than playing with Stan Bush, and I've actually interviewed the guy twice because I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy as well. When you sort of like get to know him, he's really nice.
See, we didn't know that Lee headlined both of them shows because we were done then. We were going getting drunk, and he just disappeared. I mean, fair play to him. Yeah, fair play to him. Didn't even know he was with Stan Bush.
I've not told him about George, I've not told him about the Paul Stanley and the Gene Simmons one yet. So.
Oh, geez. That Milan show was actually pretty big for Frontiers. There's a lot of big names there. I mean, you guys must have shared the stage with kind of their biggest acts.
The first one, the year before we played, was off the scale. They had everybody. They had Striper. It was massive, wasn't it? Winger. And then the year we played, it was us. No, it was the Defiance.
The Defiance
Inglorious Treat. I can't remember who headlined.
Jeff Scott Soto.
Yeah, Jeff Scott Soto. Yeah. I mean, it was a great bill, and it was just you thought you were rock stars that day.
It was great hanging around backstage, being allowed to be there, and not being ushered out.
Yeah,
that was really good. You know, like normally you're ushered out. What you guys do now? Just having a look at the band, get out.
And we got fed. I mean, we never get fed. We never get nothing backstage normally. No asking for vodka or whiskey. Don't get any of that.
Now, we were at the stage where we had this little mini bar in our dressing room, and we were like, don't touch it. It'll be magnetised. They'll charge us for all.
Cost us a fortune.
Everybody else was coming in and getting a beer, you know what I mean? We're like, no, it's going to cost us like €15.
And 24 hours later, we got told, how did you have anything out your back? Oh, what?
Yeah, it did happen in Germany, didn't it? There was a big fridge full of beer, and everyone were coming in and taking, and we said, well, that can't be for us. And it was.
It was
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
I'm not used to it.
We're quite naive, really.
Yeah. Not used to the success at all.
That's all right, but you know, you got the memories there, and I think Jeff Scott Soto's the only guy that's been in more bands than Lee.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is true.
So let's get back to Frontiers here. You guys started with your first album on Frontiers in 2015, and then you went to AOR Heaven for the next two albums. Now you're back at Frontiers. What kind of happened there?
We got on really well with them. We still do, don't we? With Frontiers. They were great to us, and they took us on. Everybody said an unknown band wouldn't get signed, and we were probably one of the first that didn't have any, star names or whatever it was. And then we won. We sort of did really well. Speedway did really well for us. Got us on all the festivals and everything. And then we did another album, and they couldn't give us a release date within.
It was nearly 2 years.
Yeah, it was almost 2 years. And we were like, we're all 50-something. Do you know what I mean?
We're too old.
So I literally got in touch with Serafino and went, we can't wait. Can we go and do another one? And honestly, he just turned around and went, yeah, go and put it out wherever you want. So we did it and did the next one with AOR Heaven. We sort of lost our way melodic rock wise, didn't we?
Yeah.
We were trying to push
rewriting or reinventing, should I say, the wheel. That's what we thought we were doing.
Changing what was successful for us, which was strange.
Yeah, straight away.
Really, but...
And it was pretty much down on my shoulders because I was like, we need a bigger audience. We need Shinedown and Nickelback's audience. So let's be Shinedown and Nickelback. Never for 1 minute thinking, you're not very good at doing Shinedown and Nickelback. You're better in 1986. So then we did that, and for this one, I just got back in touch and went, we sort of want to come home, and he was like, yeah, cool. So that's what happened. They've been great, can't fault them. Yeah. They get a lot of bad stick and a lot of bad press, but as far as us, they've been great, so fair play.
Excellent. It's that time again where we cut in for the Rockish George whiskey break. Today we're going to be trying a blended scotch from the company Douglas Laing. If you're unfamiliar with Douglas Laing, a lot of great blended scotches. That's pretty much what they're known for. They'll take different kinds of scotches and marry them together to come up with some delicious, delicious items. Today we're going to be trying the Gauldrons Campbelltown Blended Malt Scotch Whiskey. There's a little story that goes behind the Gauldrons and how it's related to a spider in the building, but I don't really go much on the stories because sometimes they're authentic, sometimes they're not. I don't really know in this one. But I will say that Douglas Laing describes the Gauldrons blended whiskey as honeycomb on the nose, brown sugar, sea salt, and a late hint of subtle spices. The palate is mouth coating and sweet with a peppery warmth developing into a beachy maritime character. The finish brings vanilla oak and puffs of smoke and a biscuit sweetness. Well, we'll see about that. So let's give it a go here. Douglas Laing, I've had many, many different expressions from the company. Every single one is great. I've actually got to meet one of the distillery reps. He was a great guy. Let us try all these different kinds. There's Rock Oyster, there's Scallywag. Both are fantastic. They have different versions of those as well. I think Gauldrons is a special edition. It only comes out once a year. It's a small batch. This is the second batch in the I guess series. All right, so let's give it a go. It's a very light scotch. It does have a lot of fruit coming on the nose. I don't want to get too geeky on you. That's not my thing. It has a bit of a spiciness. Not peat smoke spiciness, just like a bit of spiciness from a little bit of the alcohol and a little bit of the grain, I think. It's very light in color. You can definitely taste that oak and vanilla. Two flavors you tend to taste in all kinds of whiskeys and scotches, but it's a pretty good bottle. The Gauldrons, I recommend anything by Douglas Laing. This one stands right up there with the rest of them. So let's get back to Pete, Lee, and Rob of the Blood Red Saints.
Is there any pressure where you guys are your music's coming out on August? It came out on August 6th, and it was released with like 6 other Frontiers releases, like Night Ranger and Doogie White's new one, and a bunch of other big popular bands.
Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine that one.
We didn't know when it was coming out, and then a couple of months, no, about 3 months before, they told us it was coming out for August, and we had to have the videos in and stuff like that. They sent me this email, and it had the release schedule, and it said Night Ranger, and you're like, forget it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're done. We're toast. It's like Night Ranger, and then in small writing, the Blood Red Saints underneath, and you're like, oh, well, let's buy the Night Ranger and see how that goes. But it's just the way of the world, isn't it? That, that's the way it is now, and you just have to take it.
And it's getting good reviews, so the good news is at least it's peeking through. The album's pushing forward, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll speak for itself, I think, the quality of it.
Yeah, and we keep posting on forums how bad the Night Ranger album is, just to boost our credibility.
Well, I was going to say that actually the Night Ranger album is getting mixed reviews, and you guys are getting mostly positive reviews.
Yeah, you're right.
It is, yeah. What do you think of it?
I thought it was the better Night Ranger album of the last two or three. So the last couple they put out, I really didn't like it. This one kind of had them going back to where they started with Frontiers, and I thought you guys sounded great, and you sounded like a band that's been around for a while.
Yeah, too long.
Melodic rock is a tough sell in the United States, but actually I was reading that it's the United States media that's actually more interested in you.
Yeah, totally.
Without a doubt. This is our 5th interview this week.
All American.
All American.
Go figure.
So we now know what we need to do. So we now need to be booking tours in America.
Not a lot of venues for that kind of stuff. And there's not a lot of festivals in the United States either.
Which amazes us from this side of the pond, sort of thing. That was the staple of American music. American rock was, oh yeah, we need to get over there. They play stadiums, they play massive festivals, and now you're like, they play clubs.
That was the reason you wanted to go.
Yeah.
That was the reason you wanted to walk down the strip going, I've got longer hair, I'm 21-year-old, and I'm going to be gigging in either there or there or there. I want to play there, I want to play there. And every state was like that, but now you find out it's totally different.
Yeah. It's just at its day, isn't it? That's pretty much the way it is.
Sadly.
You guys have an interesting story behind your name, Blood Red Saints. I tried looking up to see if it was a legit story, but anything you run on Blood Red Saints right now always comes back to you. So what is this story about the Speedway racer?
Basically, George, we're liars. We came up with the name and we just wrote a backstory. We thought we were being funny, we thought we were being clever, until people started taking it seriously, actually believing in that backstory. I mean, you've got a better story about
this is a good
Speedway guy.
How long have you got, George?
I got time.
Okay, here we go, Pete.
So when we did it, Rob was in America, and he likes all the 50s retro sort of like imagery and stuff like that. And he emailed me from while he was in the States, and he's like, got a great title for the album. So I'm like, go on then. So he's like, Speedway, like the Wall of Death at these places, these old fairs and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's not bad. I grew up liking Speedway, which I don't know. You do have a little bit of it in America. I don't know whether it's very popular, but it's an oval track, no brakes, motorbikes. So
yeah.
So we were like, well, we can run with that. So then he comes back and we sort of started doing this backstory and making photographs of this Speedway team from the 1920s that were based in Brooklyn, and they won the Speedway World Championship, of which there is no such thing, right? So we did all this thing. We made this guy called Freddie Rendetti, put it all on the album. The album had been out about 3-4 weeks, and I get this email off this guy, and he's like, I'd like to interview you. So, you know, you do the interview. So he rings me up and he's like, yeah, he said, I work for Speedway Star, which is like the magazine in England and Europe. So I'm like, I'm thinking I'm in trouble here. So he says, and I've written a lot of books, he said, about American Speedway stars like Billy Hamilton, Greg Hancock. He said, and I've done all my research, he said, and I cannot find the Blood Red Saints. Can you clue me in? And I'm like, so I just went, you're not going to find it, mate. So he's like, why is that? So I'm like, because we just made it up. So he's like, oh, I did think when you said about the Speedway World Cup that maybe you were mistaken. I'm like, we didn't even know there was one or not. So he's like, it's okay. So we get a 2-page spread in Speedway magazine, right? But nothing to do with it apart from the title. And then about a month later, so in Manchester, the Speedway team used to be the Bellevue Aces, right? They were sort of like the best team in Britain at one point, but it had sort of all died a death, a little bit like Melodic Rock. So then they're building a Speedway stadium for the Bellevue Aces in Manchester. So the Manchester Council are behind it and stuff like that, and they won't put money into it unless it's the National Speedway Stadium, right? It has to be the National Speedway Stadium. Some guy rings me up, and I used to watch him riding Speedway in the 70s and 80s. So he rings me up and he's like, hi, Pete, it's Chris Martin, OBE, right, official member of the British Empire or whatever. I'd like you to come down to Bellevue. He said, we're building a new stadium. You'd like to be involved? So I'm like, why? Do you know what I mean? What am I going to do? Sing? So they're building this brand new, literally building a stadium. And I was the musical sort of like director for it, all off doing an album called Speedway.
And they wanted to use Kicking Up Dust.
Oh yeah, Kicking Up Dust, yeah.
Was using it as a theme tune.
And we did the World Team Cup final as the stadium. And I'm just playing our songs because I'm in the booth. I'm playing our songs all night on national television. You know what I mean? Yeah, we'll have some more Blood Red Saints.
Yeah, like start promoting it.
But yeah, in summary, it was just an out-and-out lie.
It was an elaborate one. Well, we did all sorts of things to it. We did little cards with Freddie Rendetti on, like the cigarette cards that we do. You mocked up his old family,
the Italian family,
delicatessen in black and white, and we put a ghetto blaster in it as well. We put modern things in it to give people a clue. Yeah, nobody ever saw it.
That was the beauty. That was the proper kicker for us. We spent all that time and did all these little things and wrote these stories and made sure they all fit time-wise. Nobody ever asked us about it.
How come there's a ghetto blaster in this? It's from the 1920s. They weren't around. They never saw it.
So now you know.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. I love that story. You guys should go with another story for the next album, maybe something bigger where you can.
We were going to bring Freddie
Palace
back.
Yeah,
we killed him off.
We killed Freddie off on the first album, and we sat there. We was mortified. Me and Rob were like, should we have killed him off? And like I just said, nobody asked, nobody mentioned it. We thought it was like a dynasty or something. You know what I mean? But you're right. We keep saying we'll do something else, but we'll see.
We should have done him as a boxer in this one. Really,
that's right.
We should have done it. Yeah. We made up another boxing name, didn't we? You did, didn't you?
Yeah.
What's Russo, the bull.
Danny Russo.
No, it's not Danny.
Vinny Russo, that's it.
Is it Vinny Russo?
Here's the story for you.
It's not called Vinny, is it?
No, it is Vinny Russo.
It's not Vinny. It's
Vinny the Bull Russo.
Anyway, it's only on the record, right? So we decided we'd do the one song, Undisputed. We'd do it and theme it all and stuff like that. And Rob was like, think of a cool name, like find a cool name. So I sort of Googled all the old boxers from the 40s and the 50s. And One was called The Bull, and this other one was called somebody Russo. I forgot what it was.
American one.
Yeah. So I sort of like made them both together. And then I did this voiceover, the intro voiceover, you know, pretending I was in the stadium and all that stuff. And to me, I was nailed on, full on American, right? And I played it to these, and they were like, "It sounds terrible, mate," right? And I'm like, no, it's American. And like, no, it's so far from American, it's untrue. So Lee says, I'll ask Paul Laing, right? I'll ask him to do the voiceover. So he sends him the words and my version of it. And Paul comes back.
So what? Yeah. So basically, at that point, I just ringed Paul up on Skype. I said, right, I need you to do me a big favour. I just want this. We've got it scripted. You just have to say what Pete's written down and just follow what Pete's done. So we sent Pete as a guide. So I said to him, I said, can you do it? He said, yes. And he got it. And then he wrote me back. He went,
Veto the Bull.
Veto the Bull. Right.
Russo.
So we bear in mind, Pete's put two people's names together. Veto the Bull Russo. Right. And so I said to Paul, right, so he rings me back about an hour later going, you'll never believe this. I went, what? The guy you've invented is one of his best friends in Canada. He's actually called Vito Russo, and he's got a nickname of the Bull.
Because he's a
security guard, huge security guard. And I was like, that's a story you'd never hear. So basically, out of doing that, Paul ended up doing it, but it was amazing how his actual best friend was called the same.
You guys got tons of great stories, I think, and if you invent more people, maybe they'll be in existence later on.
Yeah, I think we'll keep working on it anyway.
So, Lee, you have other projects that you work on. Pete and Rob, do you guys work with any other musicians or any other bands or doing anything musically?
Not anymore. I don't. You have though, haven't you? Recently?
Yeah, I did like a project album with some Swedish guys called Constantia. They'd done 2 albums. One of them was on Frontiers, and that was in lockdown. When we'd pretty much finished, and I left him to do all the mixing, you know, because I didn't want the hard work. It was like, oh, do this now. So we did that just as a project, really. That came out in June, I think. Yeah, June.
Yeah, it was June.
So
yeah, June.
Just a little bit different. That was, again, me trying to bring shine down to the table and failing miserably. being Pete Godfrey out of the Blood Red Saints, you know what I mean? You're like,
You see where this is going at? You know what album 5 is going to be like, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So what do you guys do outside of music? What are your day jobs?
We're all pretty much retired. I mean, I don't mean retired because we just don't do anything, do we, really? I sort of part-time. Lee does his guitar teaching. And
I actually write music for TV and film, and also I've got other things in the fire, but I teach guitar. That's like another part of the job. So
Andy, our drummer, teaches drums. We don't do much, really.
No, we just ring each other every day and complain about the world.
Yeah,
you know.
The lyrics have got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. You know, we go on and go, have you seen that new single by X? And you're like, oh, God, I only got to the chorus. You know, and we get that bored now that we do it to ourselves. You know, have you heard that song, Evan, in the night? I've not even got to the chorus, mate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Lee's the busiest one out of us all.
I like to keep busy.
You got the new album. It's Undisputed. It's out on Frontiers Music. It's a great album, great melodic rock. I think you guys do a great job. I hope it gets some ears on it.
Thank you.
Cool. What's your favourite song, if you don't mind me asking? We've asked everybody this.
The opening track there, This Ain't a Love Song. It's a little dirty. It's a little 80s rock and roll there. You don't hear too much of that today. Do you guys have favorite songs off the new album?
What's yours, Robert?
Mine is Karma. It's just about him.
Well, mine's the same as yours.
Yeah, ours is Caught in the Wreckage. I love the intro to This Ain't a Love Song because it just reminds me of Aerosmith and Extreme, really. So
yeah, absolutely. You guys are killing it. Like I said, great album, and I hope it does well for you. And eventually, you'll get out there on the stage, and we'll all hear it in person, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed, my friend. Yeah. I
want to thank you guys for appearing on the Rockish George podcast, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Pete Godfrey, Lee Revill, Rob Naylor, together with drummer Andy Chemney. They are the Blood Red Saints. Check out their latest album, streaming on all music platforms. It's called Undisputed. While you're at it, go back and check Speedway, their first album that they released. Those two albums are their more melodic rock albums. They did two other albums in between where they kind of veered away from the style, but now they're back with Undisputed. I've listened to this album. It's a great AOR melodic rock, or as we called it in the 80s, rock radio album. It's right up there with the Night Rangers of the world, the Survivors of the world, and even those hair bands that they mentioned as their influences. I want to thank Dustin Hardman of Hardman Promotions and Frontiers Music for making this interview possible. And I want to give a special shout out to Bryce Van Patten of Metal Express Radio for helping me edit this particular episode. It's a little tricky when you got three guys in the background. So stay tuned for more great interviews on the Rockish George podcast. You've been great. I've been George Dion. I'll see you soon.